Tonight, we're diving into the explosive NewzRoom Africa interview with Stuart James Scharnick, the man at the centre of the allegations made by General Kumalo at the Madlanga Commission. Buckle up, because this isn't just about clearing his name. It's about loyalty, optics, and some seriously sharp pushbacks you won't want to miss.
Now, Scharnick joins me in studio tonight to respond to these allegations. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Can I just quickly start with whether or not the Madlanga Inquiry has made contact with you already, because it does appear they have expressed an interest in talking to you.
So I reached out to them immediately when I followed the Madlanga Commission, and I realized that Lieutenant General Kumalo was misleading the Madlanga Commission, particularly with my information. I then sent a WhatsApp message to the evidence leader, as well as the spokesperson, Mr. Jeremy Michaels, and they put me in contact with Dr. Peter Gos. And those are the three people who I'm currently engaged with. However, they have not expressed that they require me there, but I have availed myself and my willingness to defend myself against the misinformation that's been let out.
All right.
You know what? Guilty or not, credit where it's due. The moment Scharnick's name popped up at the Madlanga Commission, he didn't pull a disappearing act. Instead, he picked up the phone, called the evidence leader himself, and even reached out to the Commission's spokesperson. That's not your typical lawyered up and laying low move. Say what you will about him, but stepping straight into the fire to clear his name? That takes either guts or a very confident poker face. Either way, it's rare.
Okay, now that that is out of the way, let's begin this conversation. Can you confirm the nature of your relationship with General Shadrack Sibiya and how long you've known each other for?
Well, the initial meeting with Shadrack Sibiya came about in 2021 versus 2022. And the reason why I engaged with Shadrack Sibiya was we had a spate of killings in the area where I'm from. We had a number of killings where we'd have 5 people murdered in a day. Sometimes a family of 3 were murdered. 2 people were shot and killed in a mall after that. And the murders kept increasing dramatically, and the killers were killing with impunity. We didn't find any assistance from the local SAPS. The province didn't assist us, and it left us, the business community of the area, no alternate but to engage with national. I then made inquiries on the SAPS website. It's got the details of the national head, which was Fanny Masimula at that time, 2022, late 2021, 2022, and we were supposed to meet the national commissioner. However, when we submitted the documents as to the agenda for the meeting, we were then introduced to Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibiya.
You've got to admit, Scharnick's got the calm, confident, and surprisingly articulate thing down. Watching this, you can't help but think, if Sibiya had shown even half this composure during his ad hoc appearance, he might have dodged a few of those headline migraines.
And just out of curiosity, you say the area from which you come is riddled with crime. Where exactly is that?
So that's in a place called Richards Bay. It's the city of Umhlatuzi. It's in northern KZN. It's the same area that Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi mentioned in his July 6th briefing, as well as his 2 testimonies. It's the area where he made mention of national intervening and overstepping his boundaries in murder case investigations.
And this is General Mkhwanazi who's overstepping his boundaries?
No, that was General Mkhwanazi complaining that national had overstepped his boundaries operating in KZN.
Okay. Now, you've already stated that you dispute the evidence that has been submitted at the Madlanga Inquiry about you. Can I just ask, on what grounds do you dispute this? On what grounds do you say that what General Kumalo said about you is incorrect and defamatory?
So I'd started at the point where, for number one, he says that I impersonated a protector when I appeared in the ad hoc committee seated behind General Shadrack Sibiya. And he says that SAPS members are protected by SAPS protectors. And he doesn't understand why I was there, and it seemed like I was pretending or impersonating a SAPS officer, right, which was extremely shocking because Lieutenant General Kumalo knows me, and he knows me well. And he was introduced to me by Lieutenant Shadrack Sibiya, Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibiya, in his office. So for him to come out and display the notion that he doesn't know who I am and what I was doing there is totally absurd and misleading. And that was the first red flag for me when he mentioned that.
Now this part's where it gets interesting. Scharnick isn't just denying the claim, he's flipping it back on Khumalo. He's basically saying, how do you accuse me of impersonating a protector when you literally know me? We've met in Sibiya's office. That's not just a denial, that's a direct call-out. And if he's already reached out to the Madlanga Commission to tell his side, odds are he's got receipts, messages, proof, something concrete. If that checks out, then Khumalo didn't just fumble a detail, he misled the Commission about even knowing the man. And that right there throws a serious shadow over the rest of his testimony.
Let's then go straight to General Kumalo, because you've now brought him to this conversation. I was going to ask him about, or ask about him later. You have said that you know General Kumalo very well. How long have you known each other for? And you've also said that you believe he's trying to cover his tracks by mentioning your name in that fashion. What tracks is he trying to cover?
So let's just start by clarifying the air that Lieutenant General Kumalo is currently out on bail. He has serious charges against him, and that arrest was made by IDEC for his corrupt activities. However, in our area, and the killings that had taken place will then show a pattern of what was taking place and who was involved in covering up some of the issues pertaining to the murders in our area. But when you start by asking me how long do I know him, on the second meeting with Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibiya, he's the one who then called Lieutenant General Kumalo because the murders were part of the PKTT's mandate, and they operated in that area.
Is that all?
That's where I met him from, and then we had a series of meetings after that. In terms of our communication, the cell phone records, we've been to his office, and all the way up to 2024, I still have communication that's on my cell phone with Lieutenant General Kumalo.
Oh, we see what he's doing here. Textbook strategy. Scharnick's flipping the script, reminding everyone that Khumalo himself is out on bail for corruption and fraud. It's a clever move. If you can't kill the allegation, you weaken the accuser. And the twist? He's not wrong. Khumalo is facing serious charges, yet he's still in uniform, still testifying at commissions and somehow not suspended. Make it make sense. Because in SAPS, your average constable would have been benched before lunch. But a crime intelligence boss gets to stay on the payroll and go on camera? That's not strategy, that's privilege.
You know, he's trying to paint this picture of a syndicate that's retaliating against him for this brilliant work that he's done. But the stats don't agree with what he's saying, particularly with the murder rate in KZN. The murder rate in KZN has skyrocketed. So if the PKTT was doing so brilliantly, particularly in KZN, the stats would show difference. And the second issue of anybody who raises anything negative about Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi or Lieutenant General Kumalo is part of a syndicate, and the syndicate is trying to dismantle the PKTT's work, and it's simply not true.
Yeah.
I'm not from any syndicate. I've got nothing to do with what he's doing and the charges that he's facing. The charges that he's facing are actually linked to IDEC, which is a separate matter, and has got nothing to do with the syndicate that he's trying to paint on the other side. It's two separate matters, And I'm sure that will be clarified by IDEC themselves, that we are not involved in their investigations.
All right. I want to take you back briefly to Parliament, where you appeared behind General Sibiya, and you said that you were there as part of his legal team. Just explain that to us. Do you hold legal qualifications? Do you have any experience in this field?
So when we spoke about the legal team, it's a classification used for the accreditation for you to enter into the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee. And it's either you're part of the security detail or you'd be part of the legal team. Now, when we talk about the legal team, we also talk about contributing factors to the evidence that's been led. And within General Shadrack Sibiya's evidence, there is a number of points where I'm well familiar with the matters because it pertains to the areas that I've spoken to you about earlier in the interview. So I was merely there to assist in those points, particularly that touch base on the area where I'm from as a first-hand witness to what had taken place.
Okay, so here's where things get a little murky. Scharnick claims the whole legal team label was just an accreditation formality, basically a box you tick to get past Parliament security. He insists he wasn't there as a lawyer, but as someone providing context for Sibiya's evidence. And honestly, that explanation does track. If the system only gives you two options, security or legal, then yeah, maybe he got tagged as legal by default. But let's be real. The optics are still rough. Sitting right behind a senior police general at an official hearing while carrying a criminal record, even if you're technically cleared to be there, doesn't exactly scream good judgment.
Let's talk about the white vehicle that you are said to own, which was parked outside his home, and further information suggests that he is regularly transported in this vehicle. Are you the owner of this vehicle, first of all?
Yes, I am. That's my vehicle. It belongs to me.
What is special about this car? Is it an armored car, basically an armored car, bulletproof car?
Yeah, so it's a Toyota Hilux, and it's B6 and it's bulletproofed. And when I saw that nationally they had made an announcement that Lieutenant General Sibiya's protection unit had been removed, his vehicles had been removed, his firearms, state firearms had been removed, and the protectors had been removed from him, I immediately availed the vehicle, as I have more than one vehicle, for his safety and his family's safety. Simply because I know him from working with him from the 2021 time period until now. Yeah. And I understand the modus operandi of the people that he's dealing with.
That's why people have a bit of difficulty believing you when you say you were there as part of the legal team, because now what you're explaining, it appears that you at times work as some kind of a personal protector or bodyguard. But you'll answer that in a moment. Let's talk about the criminal convictions you have against you. How many are those?
So it's another misleading factor. It's misrepresented by Lieutenant General Kumalo, and he has access to the records, particularly because he's the head of crime intelligence. The matters that you're speaking about are from 2010 and 2011. It's close to 15 years ago. And it's not 18 separate cases in 18 different magistrates with 18 different courts. It's 18 counts in one case with one magistrate with one sentence. And the sentence given, which General Kumalo conveniently forgot to read into the record, was a 5-year suspended sentence and a fine that needed to be paid, which has been paid, and the suspended sentence has lapsed.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because it's a fascinating mix of loyalty and bad optics. Scharnick openly admits that the armoured Hilux parked outside Sibiya's house was his, and that he lent it to the General after Sibiya's official protection and state vehicles were pulled. On paper, that sounds like one friend helping another. Look, I had a spare vehicle. I know the threats he's facing, so I helped him out. But let's be honest, the optics are wild. A convicted criminal, even if it was 15 years ago, handing over a bulletproof car to a suspended Deputy National Commissioner. That doesn't exactly scream nothing to see here. To be fair, he does clarify that it wasn't 18 separate convictions, but 18 counts from one case, which he fully served and cleared. So, technically, he's right. He's not a fugitive, and he's not breaking the law. But in the court of public opinion, it looks like something off the books was happening. And that's the kind of image that sticks.
What was the case about?
The case involved buying and selling of vehicles. And in the buying and selling of vehicles, there were a number of business people who had purchased vehicles and sold vehicles. However, we hadn't done the correct due diligence on the history of the vehicles. And there was a host of SAPS officials that were arrested, as well as business people that were part of the operation in a scam that was conducted over a 3-year period by certain individuals. And in the scam, vehicles' parts were removed, and some of them came from stolen vehicles, and others came from dubious sources. However, in the court ruling, they ruled that the onus is on the seller to ensure that the history of the vehicle is correct.
How much time did you serve in jail?
Not at all. I've just explained that the sentencing was a 5-year suspended sentence, and it included a fine. And that was the sentence given for the crimes that were part of the operation. Yes.
Why should we believe you when you say you are not Mr. Sibiya's protector, and yet when you say vehicles were removed from him and you needed, therefore, to give him the services, in part, this car that is bulletproof? Why should we believe you when you say you're not his personal protector?
Because number one, I think the matter's been convoluted. I wasn't offering any services to him. I simply offered him a vehicle that he could utilize in the interim while arranging his affairs, particularly around his safety. I don't drive him around in the vehicle. The vehicle was handed to him with the keys for the vehicle, and he drove himself around. But I want to put on record, I am not a member of SAPS. I never have been a member of SAPS. I'm not a close protector. I've never been a security officer. And that whole notion that was started from Lieutenant General Kumalo, who's well aware of the facts that I'm not a SAPS member, nor am I General Sibiya's close protector, because he himself was there and introduced to me by Lieutenant General Sibiya.
But your close relations to Sibiya are very clear for all to see, and the manner in which you talk about these senior police officers, the negativity, for example, that you apportion towards General Kumalo, it's very clear that this is someone that you do not speak very positively of. I'm not hearing you saying anything negative about Sibiya where evidence has been presented before the Madlanga Commission, and there is quite a bit that he needs to answer for. Are you choosing sides here?
Not at all, Xoli. In my interaction with both Lieutenant General Kumalo and Lieutenant General Sibiya, we found that, and when I say we, I mean the community found, that the assistance needed came more from Lieutenant General Sibiya. And what was left with Lieutenant General Kumalo was never acted upon and simply left aside. So in my interactions with both generals, we had a positive outcome from Lieutenant General Sibiya, and we had a negative outcome from Lieutenant General Kumalo, added to the fact that he goes to the Madlanga Commission and misleads evidence about me. So there's no way I can speak about a person who, and I'd put it simply, that he's lying under oath to the Madlanga Commission about a person whom he knows. He knows my history, he knows where I am, he knows my number, and he knows what my profession is.
Do you believe that the allegations that are being leveled against General Sibiya are true or false?
My personal feeling on this matter is that there's more that meets the eye. There's way more going on behind the facade that's been shown to the public. And if South Africa is going through the motions without questioning all angles, we'll find ourselves believing a narrative which is far off from the truth and more simply a deterrence and a distraction for the public versus the true issues that are taking place.
Okay, so here's where things get a little murky. Scharnick claims the whole legal team label was just an accreditation formality, basically a box you tick to get past Parliament's security. He insists he wasn't there as a lawyer, but as someone providing context for Sibiya's evidence. And honestly, that explanation does track. If the system only gives you two options, security or legal, then yeah, maybe he got tagged as legal by default. But let's be real. The optics are still rough. Sitting right behind a senior police general at an official hearing while carrying a criminal record, even if you're technically cleared to be there, doesn't exactly scream good judgment.
As a final question to you, given the previous convictions against you, what do you say to South Africans who raise ethical issues about what they see as a very close relationship between yourself and a very senior police general?
I must put it on record for the nation to understand. When a person is given a sentence and the sentence is served, in the Constitution of South Africa, I am deemed a free man. It's the same like Gayton McKenzie that you see as your minister. He's also been issued a sentence. He served his time. He's now a national minister serving in Parliament. The same thing and the same opportunity should be afforded to any South African that has paid his dues to society. So you can't hold me accountable for something that's taken place more than 15 years ago, where I've served my dues, and you continuously paint me with a brush for speaking to a person about a serious matter. If somebody's life's in danger, are you saying that because I have a previous conviction from 15 years ago, I must stay far away from anybody who can assist in that matter? That makes absolutely no sense. It's similar to the way the Madlanga Commission is being handled, where there's a number of allegations that have been leveled and thrown across. But the evidence, tangible evidence, clearly, is sorely lacking from what we've seen so far. And for a platform like the Madlanga Commission to be open for a Lieutenant General to come out and say half-truths without being tested is shocking, because our criminal justice system doesn't allow that. If you have a prima facie case against a person, open a case against him so that he may defend himself in the eyes of the law. Since when have we become a country that bows down to public opinion before a person has been subjected to the laws of the land?
No.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because it's a fascinating mix of loyalty and bad optics. Scharnick openly admits that the armoured Hilux parked outside Sibiya's house was his, and that he lent it to the general after Sibiya's official protection and state vehicles were pulled. On paper, that sounds like one friend helping another. Look, I had a spare vehicle. I know the threats he's facing, so I helped him out. But let's be honest, the optics are wild. A convicted criminal, even if it was 15 years ago, handing over a bulletproof car to a suspended deputy national commissioner. That doesn't exactly scream nothing to see here. To be fair, he does clarify that it wasn't 18 separate convictions, but 18 counts from one case, which he fully served and cleared. So, technically, he's right. He's not a fugitive, and he's not breaking the law. But in the court of public opinion, it looks like something off the books was happening. And that's the kind of image that sticks.
Have you had any communications with General Sibiya recently, possibly even before you came here?
Yes, I have. Yes, I did.
What's the nature of the discussion?
Well, it started yesterday, in fact, when we both spoke about what we saw and the misleading evidence that Lieutenant General Kumalo was saying to the Commission. I mean, we were both shocked. We were there when we met him. I met him in Lieutenant General Sibiya's office. He knows exactly who I am, whereas he puts on this fake notion that through CCTV camera footage and facial recognition, he managed to link me as a syndicate member. He has my cell phone number, he knows where I am, and he knows me well. But one thing I also want to hammer home about yesterday's testimony, Koli, the accreditation that's done in Parliament is done through SAPS. And Lieutenant General Kumalo has the free will to phone SAPS and ask, did that member who arrived with Lieutenant General Sibiya portray himself as a SAPS member or not? He gets the answer and he tells the truth to the Madlanga Commission. Instead, he goes around alluding to the fact that this guy seems to be pretending he should be a SAPS member. And it's those type of things that actually start becoming hilarious to say, you have a whole Lieutenant General of Crime Intelligence baffled by who signed the accreditation and what was the information on the accreditation in Parliament when the whole process is managed by SAPS.
I'm sure South Africans will be keen to know what General Sibiya thinks about what was said about him at the commission yesterday, because it was quite damaging. Is he planning to go and clear his name?
Look, from what I know, he's been prepared since day one. Any person who hears his name slandered or has integrity tainted would like to clear their name. And South Africans should allow people to have the opportunity to at least defend yourself on the public platform before an opinion is formalized without tangible evidence.
Let me end this conversation on this final note. You know, when we prepared for this interview, you gave very strict guides as to how we should promote this interview, you know, for security concerns. Are you worried about your safety? If so, where does that arise from?
Well, what we've noticed, Kole, is the constant victimization of people who speak out against the narrative that's been formulated and run by the three generals. And we see what's happened with Brown, and we see what's taking place with the general himself. I mean, if you look at the case between Lieutenant General Kumalo being criminally charged and out on bail, but has his protectors, whereas you have Lieutenant General Sibiya, who hasn't been criminally charged, but has no protection and no protectors, you ask yourself, why? But if we look deeper and then we see the utilization of the National Task Force and the National Intervention Unit being deployed simply to collect a gadget, you realize that there's an abuse of power, there's an abuse of resources, and there's an injustice taking place where you're saying, if a man wants to defend himself, he has to start with the victimization process first before he gets the platform simply to defend himself, which is a constitutional right.
All right.
Now this part lands a bit heavier. You can feel James shift from defensive to almost defiant. He's basically saying, speak against the wrong people in the police and you become a target. The way he contrasts Kumalo, out on bail yet still enjoying state protection, with Sibiya, who hasn't been charged but has zero protection, is a sharp, pointed observation. He's framing it as selective victimization. The system shields some while leaving others exposed. Sure, it's hard to verify every claim, but rhetorically, it's strong. It casts him and Sibiya as underdogs standing up to a corrupt structure, and whether that's true or not, it resonates powerfully in the court of public opinion.
Very briefly, we've now extended this interview longer than we should have. You mentioned Brown Mokhotsi. When you say look at what has happened to him, are you referring to the incident about his car? Do you believe that he was genuinely a target of assassination?
I can't comment about the car story, but what I did see in terms of the search and seizure, where more than 15 vehicles pull up to one area with more than 20 members jumping out armed to the hilt, there's clear intimidation, victimization, and abuse of resources in terms of simple mandates that can be carried out by the local stations. If you wanted to collect a cell phone and a laptop, you don't need 20 vehicles, the National Task Force, National Intervention Unit, Crime Intelligence, and 15 armed SAPS officers to collect one cell phone. And that should make South Africans think.
Stuart James, Scharnick, thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you,
this
sir.
evening.
So, what do we make of Stuart James Scharnick? Calm, confident, and sharp. He doesn't just defend himself. He flips the script, calls out selective victimization, and turns his past conviction into a point about fairness. If he were called to testify at the Madlanga Commission, every claim would be challenged, and given how precise he was here, it could completely shift the narrative around Sibiya and senior police leadership in KZN. Agree with him or not, one thing's clear. Scharnick knows how to control the story, make you question assumptions, and turn the tables on those throwing allegations. This isn't just an interview, it's strategy on display.